Edward was a middle-aged man who always kept to himself and maintained a stern countenance. Living in the quiet town of Meadowbrook, a community with diverse people from different cultures. He was known for his hostile attitude towards people of color, rarely engaging in the social activities that brought the townsfolk together. However, his life took an unexpected turn one sunny afternoon when his black neighbor's dog Max wandered into his yard. Edward had always been particular about his well-manicured lawn, and the sight of Max digging up his carefully tended flower beds and chasing butterflies infuriated him. Frustration bubbled within him like a simmering pot on the stove, and without much thought, he stormed into his house, returning with a shotgun. Max, unaware of the danger looming, continued his joyful romp around the yard. Edward, fueled by anger and annoyance, took aim and fired. The gunshot echoed through the neighborhood, silencing the cheerful sounds of children playing and birds singing. Max yelped in pain, collapsing to the ground, yelling for help, looking innocently into Edward's eyes. The shock of what happened hit Edward like a wave, like something struck within him. The reality of his actions sank in, and remorse flooded his conscience. His conscience would not let him be, as he realized the severity of the situation. He felt worse the more he thought about what he has done. Word of the incident quickly spread through the tight-knit community, and the townsfolk were appalled by Edward's actions. Outrage festered, and a dark cloud of discontent hung over Meadowbrook. The Thompson name, once respected, now became synonymous with cruelty. In the midst of the chaos, Edward found himself ostracized and shunned by his neighbors. The guilt he carried weighed heavily on his shoulders, and sleep became an elusive stranger in the nights that followed. Haunted by the memory of Max's suffering and the consequences of his hasty decision, Edward decided to confront his own demons. He sought solace in the quiet corners of his home, grappling with the harsh reality of his actions. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the landscape, Edward made a solemn promise to himself: he would find a way to make amends. Determined to change his ways, Edward reached out to local animal shelters and volunteered his time. He was ready and his mind was made up. The initial reactions from the shelter staff were skeptical, given his notorious reputation, but Edward's sincerity and remorse gradually won them over. He immersed himself in the care of abandoned and injured animals, channeling his guilt into a newfound purpose. As the days turned into weeks, Edward's transformation became evident. He spent his afternoons cleaning kennels, feeding hungry mouths, and offering comfort to animals that had been neglected. The once cold man discovered warmth in the gentle purring of pets and the trusting gaze of abandoned dogs. His heart, once hardened by anger, began to thaw. News of Edward's redemption spread throughout the town, and a subtle shift in perception occurred. One afternoon, as Edward was tending to the animals at the shelter, a familiar face appeared at the entrance. It was Mr. Jenkins, his black neighbor, the owner of Max, the dog Edward had shot. He approached cautiously, eyeing Edward with a mix of suspicion and curiosity. Mr. Jenkins offered him a sit and said, "I heard you've been volunteering here." Edward nodded, his gaze fixed on the ground. "I'm trying to make things right, to find a way to balance the scales." He explained and sincerely apologized. Mr. Jenkins studied Edward for a moment before sighing. "What you did was unforgivable, but I see a change in you. Max is still recovering, but he's getting better. The vet says he's lucky to be alive." A surge of relief washed over Edward, mixed with gratitude for the forgiveness he had not expected. It was a moment of reckoning, a step toward healing the wounds inflicted. Over time, Edward's commitment to the welfare of animals extended beyond the shelter. He began attending town meetings, advocating for stricter animal welfare laws and organizing community events to raise awareness. As the seasons changed, so did Edward. The once bitter man evolved into a compassionate advocate for the voiceless. Edward's involvement in community projects, particularly those related to animal welfare, brought about a change in the town's perception of him. The once isolated man found himself surrounded by newfound allies who admired his commitment to redemption. One of his most significant endeavors was the establishment of a community animal clinic. Edward tirelessly worked to garner support from both residents and local businesses, rallying them behind the cause. The clinic aimed to provide affordable veterinary care for pets in need and promote responsible pet ownership. Volunteers came forward, and even some of Edward's harshest critics began to acknowledge the positive change he was bringing to their community. The opening day of the clinic was a momentous occasion. Residents, along with their furry companions, lined up outside the freshly painted building. Edward stood at the entrance, a mix of nervousness and excitement visible in his eyes. He couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought him to this point, a journey of self-discovery and redemption. Among the crowd was Mr. Jenkins, Max's owner. The Labrador, now fully recovered, a testament to the resilience of animals and the possibility of forgiveness. Mr. Jenkins approached Edward, extending a hand. "I never thought I'd see the day," he admitted, a small smile playing on his lips. "You've done something good here, Edward." Edward shook Mr. Jenkins's hand, gratitude evident in his eyes. "I couldn't have done it without the support of the community. And I'm grateful for your forgiveness." Max, sensing the positive atmosphere, wagged his tail enthusiastically. It was as if he, too, understood the significance of the moment. The clinic became a hub of activity, serving as a focal point for the town's newfound unity. Local veterinarians volunteered their time, and residents contributed in various ways, ensuring the sustainability of the project. Meadowbrook became a model for other communities, demonstrating the transformative power of redemption and the ability to turn a negative event into a catalyst for positive change. As the years passed, Edward's commitment to the clinic never wavered. It became a symbol of his redemption, a living testament to the idea that even those who had strayed down dark paths could find their way back into the light. The once isolated man had become a respected figure in Meadowbrook, and his story served as a reminder that second chances were not just a possibility but a reality. The scars of that fateful day were still a part of his story, but they no longer defined him. And so, in the quiet town of Meadowbrook, where once a gunshot had shattered the tranquility, a new narrative had emerged, one of redemption, forgiveness, and the enduring power of second chances.